How many times have you beaten an RPG? How many RPGs have you beaten? And what happens when you do go back to them, but you realize it's not the same? So many questions, so many perspectives, and so many factors involved into going back to an RPG that you love. I want to start saying that there are tons of RPGs that offer quite a replayability value, but some of them are just not among our favorites, and we always just beat them once or never even finish them. So as usual, remember this is all a matter of opinion, and each one of us has their own favorite games. Therefore, replay value is entirely subjective. In my case, there have been great experiences out there that I have enjoyed and loved, but that for one reason or two I haven't touched them ever since I first beat them. So when do an RPG becomes a game with high replay value? Well, to me it doesn't necessarily need to have a great story, but rather an addictive gameplay. I mostly play RPGs for their stories, I confess that is true. But a game is a game, and no matter its story, if the gameplay is boring, frustrating, hard, or just plain bothersome, chances are I'll probably never play it twice, regardless of if I beat it or not. But for this video, I'm gonna focus on the ones I have beaten. The one game that I have beaten the most is obviously Chrono Cross, which you all know is my favorite video game ever. Yes, I love the story and the music, both were a solid excuse to go back to it, but the truth is that I wanted to get every single character into my party and then watch and play all of its different endings and routes. However, the one thing that got me playing it over and over again was the fact that in every single playthrough I retained the levels of my characters from the previous one. Therefore, I wouldn't have to suffer through all its hardships a second time. The same thing can be said about other games, Growlancer 5 being yet another example. Here, you don't retain your levels, but you get some accessories that make your characters very powerful, therefore making your second playthrough much easier, so you can go and get all the endings, all the paths, and unlock all characters. So to me, these kinds of things are a great help into deciding which RPGs have replay value or not. In other words, something that can make the game easier so I can just have fun, get endings, characters, items, etc. There are other games where this doesn't happen, however. No matter how many times you play the game, there's no keeping your level or having powerful accessories or whatever to make your experiences easier. The thing with these games is that they are so good and so addictive to play that they make you go back to them regardless of their difficulty. I'm a huge Suikoden fan, and there are no better examples than those games to prove my point. Some of them are just really that good that I don't care what I get in a new game plus, I'm going to beat them again. Most Fire Emblem titles are the same case. You usually don't get anything on every new playthrough, but the addictive gameplay is still there, so I've beaten some of them quite a few times. I think every time you replay a game, it's always a new experience. Not entirely new as if you've never had it before, but different. It all comes down to what kind of gameplay mechanics you love the most. Going back to Chrono Cross as an example, I love everything about it, so even after beating it like 10 times already, to date, I still love it. But other games, I realized by playing them a second time or a third time that I just don't love them as much as I did on the first time. Others, I liked them the first time, and then I loved them on the second time. So in the end, what matters most is what I said before about experiences, on how every single time you replay them, there's something different. Positive and or negative, but different all the same. And since human beings always act and make decisions according to their experiences, if in some games you went through several negative parts and hated them, chances are you won't be playing them again, therefore losing all replay value in an instant. If your experiences were mostly positive and those frustrating or boring parts are very few, then chances are you'll replay them again, maybe 3 times, maybe 4, who knows? Valkyrie Profile 2 is a really hard RPG, but believe it or not, I've done it in it as well. How, you ask? Well, there's one last thing I want to mention, and that is how each time you play again, you get better. So those hard parts that you suffered through or even bitched about and got frustrating the first time you played them, you find out they're not that hard anymore because you got better in the game. And that's exactly what I love about replay value. How every time I replay an RPG, it's a different experience than before. So to end this video, I'm gonna briefly show the games I've beaten most times, not necessarily making them my favorite RPGs of all time though, but rather the ones I've played the most. Only 5, otherwise this list will be filled with Suikoden's and Fire Emblems.